Right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to you, or good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world. You are welcome to the Nairametrics, another Nairametrics webinar, another very informative, very insightful webinar from the good folks at Nairametrics, who are the advocates for financial literacy. You know the website, www.nairametrics.com. Keeping you up to date with everything going on around not only the Nigerian economy, but around the world in sectors across, that span across the globe: technology, government policy, private sector, everything you can think of. This very, very insightful webinar is an economic outlook. The topic, the theme, the path to Nigeria's economic recovery 2023 and beyond. My name is 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗺. I host the Global Business Reports on Arise TV, also Business Express on Smooth 98.1 FM. I am very, very humbled that Nairametrics asked me to co-moderate with the man himself, 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗲, for this webinar. You are all very welcome. There's a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Type in your questions. We will have a Q&A session, but you can see our panelists, whom I'm about to introduce right now, that will be joining us for this very, very insightful discussion. So it is very interactive. Once we're gone through all the points, be sure to put in your questions there, and we'll answer your questions when we get to that segment. So let's introduce the panelists right now. Have a lot of individuals that are going to be joining us, that are going to be parts of this now. So first of all, I have to tell you about the man himself, 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗲, aka 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗲, who is a moderator of this event. He is the founder and partner at Nairametrics Financial Advocates, chartered accountant, over 18 years working experience covering accounting, corporate finance, financial management, corporate strategy, business development, change management, and personal finance. He's also a certified investor relations practitioner and registered member of the UK IR Society. He also writes the Stock Selector newsletter, which you definitely have to sign up for. It's a fantastic newsletter on stocks and the Nigerian Stock Exchange. 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗲 is respected personal finance advocate, financial analyst, and blogger, and has written several articles, including financial literacy, Nigerian stock market, as I just said, and the economy. And he's one of the pioneers of personal finance advocacy in Nigeria, and has created several personal finance and small business shows on radio, podcasts, social media, and YouTube, where the content is highly regarded. So it's a welcome to have 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗲 here as well. Put up our next, well, the next panelist is me. We can skip me. I already introduced myself. Let's go to the next panelist, 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗲𝗺 Oyedele. Mr. 𝗧𝗵𝗺 Oyedele is the fiscal policy partner, and we get my picture out of the way there. All right, there we go. Fiscal policy partner and Africa tax leader at PwC. He's an author, keynote speaker, strategist, policy analyst, and commentator on finance, business, and economic matters. I've been so privileged to sit next to him and listen to his insightful views on the economy. He is the thematic lead for the Fiscal Policy and Planning Commission and chair of the Debt Management Roundtable of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, chair of the Taxation and Fiscal Policy Faculty Board of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, member of the Nigerian Taxation Standards Board, and a member of the Ministerial Committee on the Implementation of Nigeria's National Tax Policy. Mr. Oyedele is a regular guest on various media programs on television, radio, online broadcasting platforms. He is frequently referenced in many national newspapers and international publications. I can personally attest to that. You've seen his name everywhere, right? He's a member of the Global Tax Forum and a former member of the Global Governing Council of the ACCA. Mr. Oyedele is an alumnus of the London School of Economics, Yale University, Harvard Kennedy School of Executive Education. He's a guest lecturer at the Lagos Business School and founder and president of Impact Africa Foundation. Incredibly happy to have 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗲𝗺 on this panel. Let's take a look at our next panelist, 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗲𝗺, who is the 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗺𝗃 Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of Financial Institutions Training Center, FITC. She has over 2 decades of professional experience that cuts across marketing, business process reengineering, market growth strategy, reputation management, and business consulting. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗃 has led various strategic and transformational projects in the financial services sector, local and international. She's global, all right? In strategy, product marketing, electronic banking, retail, wholesale, private banking, and brand repositioning. She's a member of several professional associations, including Chartered Institute of Marketing, London, Chartered Institute of Marketing Nigeria, Chartered Institute of Bankers, Institute of Directors. That's in London. She is an executive education alumni of the London Business School, UK, and the Columbia University in New York in the United States. She is a prolific and respected international speaker. She has developed and facilitated several training courses in reputable institutions such as Lagos Business School, Financial Institutions Training Center, and Brand Platform Academy. And she's very passionate about impact, enterprise, and family. Welcome to her. Great to have her as well. Let's take a look at our next panelist. Yes, we have Mr. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗲. He is an economist, investment and wealth manager, over 18 years experience in asset management, currently managing director of Greenwich Asset Management Limited, Lagos, obtained his BSc in economics from 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗃 University and MSc in business and financial economics from the University of Greenwich, London, United Kingdom. A warm welcome to you, sir. And he's also representing the Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. So very, very warm welcome to you as well. And let's look up our next panelist. My Oga, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, founder, managing director, Cowrie Asset Management Limited, chairman, Standard Alliance Insurance PLC, chairman, Fidelity Pension Managers Limited, BSc, University of Lagos, MBA, Lagos Business School, Pan Atlantic University, Lagos, a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, fellow, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, honorary senior member, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, member of the Institute of Directors, attended several courses, including Harvard Business School, also in the USA, the IASC Business School, University of Navarra, Barcelona, Spain, and the Wharton Business School in Pennsylvania. He's a facilitator with 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗃, a world leader in business events with offices in London, New York, Singapore, Sydney, Dubai, Johannesburg, and the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. He's a regular speaker at the AFCIC Investing in Africa Conference London, and media commentator on the economy, capital market, banking industry. And Mr. Johnson Chukwu, if you've interviewed him, he doesn't even need questions. He's always ready. We love him. Good to have him. Good to have him on this panel. And who else we got? Okay, I think, yeah, that's it. That's our panel. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗃, I yield the floor to you to kick things off.
All right, thank you so much, Brutus, for that. Welcome everybody, and to our panelists who are joining us again for yet another economic outlook. Thank you all so much for being a part of this session. This quarter session is actually very important to us because we are at a pivotal point in the economy in Nigeria. In particular, it's inflation, all over the world. We're suffering here in Nigeria. I think yesterday we got stats and that revealed we're above 18% inflation rate. Everybody's scared that we might be getting into a recession. We face currency crisis. So it's just a plethora of challenges. And today we want to just dissect everything and perhaps point all of you to where we think Nigeria will be headed and what we need to do to avoid any catastrophe that might befall this economy if we don't take urgent steps. And I am so proud of having this amazing panel here. You have seasoned professionals here with us today to share insights. This is a very busy people, and we also know you're also busy. So we're going to try as much as possible to condense this within 90 minutes so that we can all be done and go about our work on Saturday. So economists suggest that the country's GDP growth rate should be, at least in tandem with its population. We haven't yet experienced that in Nigeria, at least since 2007 or 8 or thereabouts. We have constantly, had the economy grow way below population growth rate, and that poses challenges. So we're going to be starting with GDP and productivity in session 1 of this webinar. And I will start first with you, 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗃. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗃, are you there? I'm going to start first with you. We have struggled with, being above 5% GDP for some time now. To understand why, to shed more light, what can we do? Or maybe what are the initial challenges of growing above 5%, right? And then what can we do to keep above that? Because I think, according to data, population growth is somewhere between 2.53% or so annually. But we've constantly grown within that trajectory. What do we need to do as an economy to at least be above 5% GDP growth rate? 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗃.
Yeah, thank you very much, 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺, for that question. I think first and foremost, even the GDP growth rate itself, the average for the past 10 years is under 2%. I think it's about 1.9%. And you're right, our population growth rate is much higher than that, close to 3%. So what that means is every single day, more people get into poverty, especially if you consider the fact that that growth rate, as small as it is not even inclusive, which means the inequality you have in society is expanding by the day. So more people get into poverty. A few people are so privileged, not because they're working so hard, but because they have access to the treasury and they take all the money for themselves and their family and cronies. What that means is, if you don't do something and do it urgently, you may get to a situation that is looking like Sri Lanka or maybe even worse than that. And the reason is that, you know, statistics is always about averages. So you say GDP growth rates, inflation rates, unemployment rates, but the reality is that everyone has their own, you know, statistics, economic data, right? So there are some households where the unemployment rate is 100% because nobody is working, right? So there are households where the things they buy is mostly food, and that will be true for many households in Nigeria. I think that over 60% of Nigerian households spend between 80 to 120% of their household income on food alone. This was some statistics that was published a couple of years ago. So, and you know that the food inflation is the highest, over 20%. So the 18.61 or thereabout that we have now is high, but actually it's higher for some people than what we even have. So what Nigeria needs to do to be able to address that problem is that we need to start first with the low-hanging fruits and policy interventions. We have to make the country, this country, work for everyone. When you share 5,000 to a few people, you have almost 100 million people living below poverty line, right? And then you share 5,000 to a few people, a few thousand, and you say you're solving poverty problem, you're not doing anything. You're just wasting the money, especially because the money is even borrowed. So we have to start by first identifying what are those policy interventions that can move the needle at scale to address poverty and also to help small businesses. Some data say there are over 40 million of them. And in my view, you can start with tax policy. So I do think that today we are taxing poverty. So my analysis, I came to a conclusion that if the poverty threshold now is about $2.15, even if you use the black market rate, sorry, even the official rate, which is lower, the average size of a household in Nigeria is 5 people. Based on unemployment and underemployment data, effectively about 2 people will be working if they're lucky. So 5 people, $2.15 a day for 30 days will give you around 140,000 divided by the 2 people that are working. It means that you are taxing anybody who is earning 70,000 or less a month. You are taxing poverty. When people cannot feed themselves and they have no hope where the next meal will come from, they cannot be rational, and therefore you have these social issues that we are dealing with. The second one is help SMEs. Don't be an impediment in the, in the process of people just wanting to do legitimate business. There's over-regulation, there's multiple taxation, there's informal taxes, there's implicit taxes. And the only organ that can solve this problem is government. Just bring in some coordination, simplify the life for them, and let them be able to do what they have to do. And more broadly, issues to do with the FX regime. If money can come into Nigeria, but there's uncertainty as to whether it can leave, then it won't come, right? So you deal with FX policy, and you begin to see a lot more investment and growth. And if you allow me, I can be on this for the next 2 hours, but I'll stop.
All right, 𝗧𝗵𝗺, thanks. It's still on you though, because I mean, you did touch on some important points here. Appears the government seems to be taxing poverty, but government on the other hand will come and say, look, where do you want us to generate revenue from? You guys criticize us, when we go to the debt market to borrow. You guys say our revenue to GDP or tax to GDP ratio is the smallest or one of the lowest in the world. So how else is government going to generate revenue?
Awesome question. Thanks for asking that question. It's such an important one. I hold the view, and this is based on evidence because I deal with tax issues even before the World Bank stopped their doing business in more than 190 countries around the world. So I'm not making this up, right? So the money you will make as a country will never come from the poorest people. You cannot give what you don't have, right? So in most countries, the top 1% alone account for more than half of government revenue. If you now extend it to like top 5%, top 10%, that's where your money is. So government has to design their tax policies to focus on the middle class and the upper class. Beyond that, I'll tell you that the biggest tax evasion we have in Nigeria, most of it are in the public sector. You find MDAs collecting withholding tax and VAT, they are not remitting it. Government is begging them, as in, can you imagine? We're begging MDAs to remit money to government. Just fire people and then they will know that they have to remit the money that belongs to government to government. The Auditor General for the Federation did an audit, I think about 2 years ago, that says that even the presidency is not remitting the PAYE they are deducting on their staff. National Assembly is not remitting taxes. EFCC is not remitting taxes. So this is where the problem is. You have to ensure that people do the right thing. It's not by beating up the people at the bottom of the ladder that you make money from. On top of that, you need to harmonize taxes. The number of taxes are too many. Those that are yielding positive returns to the economy are less than 10. Unofficially, there are more than 200 around. Repeal them, harmonize them. People will pay less, government will collect more. The number of agencies collecting taxes are also too many. So this is rent seeking. All of them collect 7% cost of collection. In fact, many of them use consultants, 15%, 20%. The money is still, Nigerians are paying, just that government is not getting it, right? Because we're losing it in the middle to corruption, to leakages, and to inefficiency. And the last one is actually for government as well, to make sure that they demonstrate value for the little that we pay. That social contract is so important to improve the tax morale, and therefore people are more willing, or at least it's less painful for them to pay a little bit more. So I'm confident that if government will do all of this, with a bit of automation and using intelligence for taxes, you know, these politicians have been paying these ridiculous amounts to get their nomination rights, and many of them haven't ever paid taxes before. They don't even have tax clearance certificates. It should not be possible for you to be able to get away with something like that in a country where they use data and intelligence, so everybody pays their fair share. And this will help us to address the revenue problem that we're having, which is now becoming almost a crisis.
All right, thank you so much for those insights, Taiwo. I know Taiwo is an expert on taxation, and there's nobody else that you can take his word for. You know, that very few people out there that understands Nigerian taxation better than Taiwo. I'm gonna come to you next, Johnson. I hope you're there. We need to see your beautiful face. All right, thank you, sir. All right, so I mean, you've had Taiwo also provide, you know, some insights into what the government can do, but we also know, you know, Nigeria. Oftentimes they say Nigerian economy is not diverse, but I mean, our economy is actually very much diverse. And but the questions become, what sort of sectors should we be looking at, you know, to drive economic growth in Nigeria? Is it the manufacturing sector? Is it the service sector, like some people would say, or should we continue with the agri sector, which the current government believes should be the key driver for economic growth for Nigeria? You know, with your experience, what do you think we should be doing?
Okay, thank you, Go, for this webinar. And my salutation to all my panelists, fellow panelists. I can see Taiwo spoke extensively. Rochus, thank you for those compliments. Dio, I can see you're representing DG. Your introduction, I expected you have intervened on the introduction. Dio is an executive commissioner with Securities and Exchange Commission. He used to be with Greenwich. And my good friend, and anyway, 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗺, as you say, will come on up. Okay, back to the issue, your question. Well, like you rightly said, our economy is relatively diversified in terms of productivity. And what are those sectors we should be pushing or government should be encouraging? Taya had made allusions to the small and medium-scale enterprises that have been overtaxed and overburdened. In an economy of this nature, given the level of sophistication of the economy or economic agents, I think the small and medium-scale enterprises should be the engine of growth in this country. That the activities cut across all sectors, all subsectors, all productive sectors of the economy. But I want to look at them as a subgroup. And the key thing is that we need to encourage productivity and productive activity at that level, where a mom and shop could set up a small business. That's actually how China grew. And you can't replicate what happened in the place like South Korea, where they had a 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗃. But the appropriate thing is, if an economy, a country with a large population, you need to make sure you have a kind of highly distributed or diverse productive base. And that's where the SMEs should come in. But if you talk of sectorial productive sectors, then I would say beyond agriculture, and when we talk about agriculture in most countries are basically focused on food security. There is no economy in the world today that has become industrialized because it's an agricultural economy. Agriculture is basically an extractive industry. That's the base of human industrialization. That's how humanity started when we moved away from pastoral or activities into settle in one location and doing agriculture. So it can never be the engine of economic growth, economic diversification. It is necessary, it's absolutely necessary for us to have what you may call food security. So emphasis on agriculture is important, but it's not what will lead us to become a sophisticated, industrialized, and developed economy. Now, let's look at those sectors that are critical. Manufacturing sector. Manufacturing sector today account for just about 4% or thereabout of the GDP. And unfortunately, that is the sector that should create employment. For an economy where about 45% of the youths are unemployed, you need to grow those sectors that will create employment. And to grow the manufacturing sector, we need to do the heavy lifting, address the issue of infrastructure supply, address, Taiwo has spoken about the tax regime, address logistic issues, the seaports for import and export of goods and services, the airports, the transport infrastructure, the rail lines, the highways, and the airports. Then you talk of the availability of funding, which the central bank has done a couple of things to do in terms of intervention funding or development finance initiatives. Then you go beyond that. You look at those, what are those growth sectors of the economy? Look at the second largest contributor to the economy, which contributes about 16.2% today, is the ICT sector. Unfortunately, that ICT sector used to grow at almost 20-30%. It's now growing at about 12%. So that sector would need to, and it's actually the new economy. That's where the digital economy is. That's one sector that the government must do everything to do to encourage. If you look back just a few years back, you realize that the government policies seem to be anti-ICT. They heap the heavy tax on MTN, which had to be resolved politically. And it doesn't seem that we recognize that this sector is as critical to other sectors of the economy. If you go to Western countries today, ICT, availability of broadband internet is considered as one of the critical infrastructure supply. If you go to any open space in any Western country, you can enjoy free Wi-Fi services. That we must do. The third largest contributor to the economy is trade sector. Taiwo spoke on the FX regimes and the policies that underlying current FX environment, which is actually a major constraint to the trade sector. Trade sector accounts for about 16.1% of the GDP. It had been in recession for a long time until just resumed growing after the release of the lockdown. It grew by about 6% in the first quarter of this year. That sector is another sector we must encourage. Then you look at construction industry and what have you. But in some way, don't hold up everybody. We need to look at manufacturing sector. It is very important because You can't have a population that is projected about 218 million at the end of this year, and you become only a service industry. If we were Singapore, we could have been a service industry. Even Singapore with a small population, it's a manufacturing hub. If we are a United Arab Emirates with a small population, you can have become a service-oriented economy. We must be a manufacturing sector. When we talk of agriculture, remember that in 1960, when we got independent, our population was just about 45 million people. Today, we are 218 million. And we still agriculture will be the foreign exchange, and we still agriculture will be the sophistication that we need to develop. No, we need to encourage you to the extent of having food security, focus on manufacturing sector, focus on ICT sector, focus on trade sector, construction sector, and these sectors will actually grant us the heavy lifting we need for the economy to begin to grow.
Thank you so much for that, Johnson. I mean, you mentioned manufacturing sector, ICT, trade as the key drivers for economic growth for emerging markets like Nigeria, and a lot less emphasis on agriculture. Agriculture, as you said, should basically be the foundation for food security as it is in most countries around the world. But I want to ask you on the manufacturing aspect. We know that, you know, we've said this time and time again that manufacturing sector should drive economic growth. But people will come back and say, look, how is that even possible? We have issues with power, we have issues with logistics, we have issues with capacity, even some of the factors of production we need to import before we even start to produce. So how do we create an enabling environment to attract the sort of investments that will allow the manufacturing sector to thrive? And when I say investment, not just in the manufacturing sector, even other sectors that support the manufacturing sector, most of which is also services. So I just want to hear your view on that, sir.
Okay, in fact, I will start from those other sectors that support the manufacturing sector, one of which is the quality of labor. We have a huge youth population. Today, more than 50% of Nigerian, in fact, 86.6% of the Nigerian population are below the age of 50. So if you look at that kind of population demography, you realize that the focus, our most critical resource is the human capital. But unfortunately, we have a human capital that is not well developed. We need to go back and address one critical element, which is what China did: quality of education. If we go back and addressing the issue of quality of education from the nursery school level to primary school to secondary school to universities, it will take about 10-20 years to build the kind of skills that you need to make this country an attractive destination for manufacturing, where investors are looking at, we're going to get quality labor that is not very expensive. I remember one, I think it was the former MD of Apple that said that why they are going to China is because the number of programmers in China, in America, can be put in a single hall. But the number of programmers in China cannot, a single stadium cannot accommodate them. That is not just about the cost of labor, it's availability of labor. And that is very critical to become a destination for foreign direct investors that want to manufacture, that want to create the manufacturing sector. Second issue, you mentioned those bottlenecks: power supply, transport infrastructure supply, logistics supply. They are not insurmountable. And like I said, we need to have a development plan that says in the next 15 years, we're going to build the quality of labor, we're going to build the infrastructure that will support that. The government is toying with what they call economic zones, economic export zone or zones or something like that, special economic zone.
Okay, it looks like Mr. Johnson's connection froze a bit. So let's just give a few minutes. By the way, we have about over 300 participants so far. Please, there's a link on the chat. Just click on it, or you send it, share it with your friends, colleagues, family members, anyone who you think would find this session very, very valuable. A recording of the session will also be on the Nairametrics website, at least from Monday, but there's nothing like being live on this discussion and listening to our panelists delve into topics. So we're gonna move straight to Dio, pending when we get Johnson back. Is it okay? All right. Morning, sir. Good to have you here. you've heard Taiwo and Johnson, and hopefully we get Johnson back. There's been a lot of policies that have come in from government over the last few years, and I would think 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺 has been one of those government agencies or parastatals that has been at the forefront of trying to draw the sort of capital that we need to move this economy forward. So the question to you basically is, apart from some of the policies that we've seen so far, are there more policies that the government needs to do to drive economic growth in Nigeria? Hold that on. Let's allow Johnson finish. He's back. So that's the question for you, sir. But let's allow Johnson finish. Continue, sir.
This is just what those infrastructure deficit. I had to come with two network access so that if one goes down, I could switch to the other one. Okay, I was saying that if you remember, 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺 set up places like Agbara industrial layouts, provided infrastructure that supported that industry to go and set up there. They're not doing that. So key thing is that the other bottlenecks, the other limiting factors like infrastructure can be overcome in the next 10 years. We can actually improve our supply in this country, like often says we in the world. We can improve the road and other transport infrastructure, the rail lines. If we just have to define a timeline and agree on those deliverables. Infrastructure, but the fifth most important factor is quality of human capital. Get the human capital right, and then support it with with infrastructure, and then we'll have this. If we don't do that, just for emphasis sake, Nigeria has subscribed the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. What that means is that with our 218 million population, companies will come and set up in Benin Republic, in Ghana, employ their citizens, and export to this country. It will happen if we don't get it right. We're setting up an enabling environment that will ensure that we are a cost-efficient producer, and we also have the capacity to produce quality goods. And that's why I started with human capital, because if you don't have the quality level, you can't produce quality goods. If you don't produce quality goods, your goods cannot compete. So you must compete in terms of quality and cost. And these factors I mentioned will address them. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, sir, for those insights. I'm sure that, I have my iPad full already with a lot of nuggets that you've shared. So I'm going to come to you now, Dayo. So again, just to repeat the question. There's been a lot of policies by the government, some favorable, some highly criticized, and 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺 has also been at the forefront of policy making, particularly when it comes to allowing businesses to thrive in the country. What other policies do we need to see, or should we expect to see from the point of view of government over the next few years that can help drive this, growth, GDP growth? Please mute, admin. Please mute. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, first, thank you very much, Ugo, and for Nairametrics for putting this together. I hope I'm audible enough.
Very much
now,
so. Okay.
I think the first thing, and thank you very much, Mr. Chukwu. So before my employers actually blacklist me and think I'm holding two jobs, I'm an executive commissioner of operations with the Securities and Exchange. And it's on that platform I'm here representing the Director General, just to make that really quickly clear. So for all the listeners and viewers, kindly amend that in your mind while the admin updates my CV to reflect that. Now, the first thing is, I think I couldn't be more pleased with the quality of the panelists to say that without patronizing them or you, the organizers. The question is, in my head, is that are we looking for more policies, or let's even implement the ones we have? Over the years, there have been, a whole room will be filled with different white papers, blue papers, yellow papers, pink papers that have been written on different levels. Integrated infrastructure plan, economic recovery and growth plan, industrial revolution plan, so many plans. Let's talk about execution. And that leads me to one paper, and coincidentally, I think it was Taiwo's review earlier in the year that made me. That's the Nigerian National Development Plan. It was his review that even made me even look at that plan in more detail, because what we are talking about is enhancing productivity. What is productivity? A man will be productive when he directly sees, like it's a rule of the pencil, when you can draw your own reward from being productive, whether for self-satisfaction, whether for increased economic power in terms of spending power, or what have you. I'll give you an extract of this Nigerian National Development Plan. It has 6 broad objectives, because your question to me is, what plan should we look to even, or policy should we be expecting to boost productivity? And I'm saying, I think the question is, what do we need to do to increase the level of implementation and actualizing several plans, laudable ones, brilliant on paper, that we need to do in this country? I'll just read quickly. 6 broad objectives of that National Development Plan. Focus on economic diversification, which is something we've been talking all, like this decade at least. We've been talking about improving non-oil revenue and increasing the dollar earning power of our non-oil exports. Investment in infrastructure. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗺 said that, even Ty will touch on that. I'm sure throughout this conversation, it's going to come up. It talks on security and good governance. I mean, we are entering into an election phase. Education and a healthy population. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗺 touched on that. Poverty alleviation. All of these first 3 things. Productivity will alleviate poverty. So we're quite clear on that. So if you can do those first 3, you're on your way to solving the 3rd one. I mean, or the 4th one. Then economic and social development across states. If the sum of all the parts is bigger than the whole, I think it makes logical sense to do so. You know, so in my own head, it's about the implementation. Now, let's even talk just a little bit, a couple of minutes, on how do you even boost this productivity? What does productivity even mean in the minds of people? So this is not like a textbook meaning. So a man wants to do a business. Let's use agriculture as an example. I mean, it goes without saying, different kind of analysis will show up. It says over 70% of farm produce gets rotten for different reasons. Storage is an issue. Logistics, transportation, infrastructure is an issue. And depending on what kind of part of agric you're in, you might require power to do that. And because of that, the quality of your seedlings and the quality of your output gets affected. So it's not even enough or fit for even local consumption, talk less of meeting the standard grades to be exported. By the time you don't export, you don't even tap into the foreign earnings you are looking and you're aspiring to grow, to diversify the economy. So I think, Ugo, and every other listener, I think the main thing is for us to constantly appraise the situation and implement what we had already planned. A lot of these things have been crafted in paper. So instead of just advising, if this was an objective question and I was meant to choose among different options, I'll just say focus on the Nigerian National Development Plan. Just focus on it, because it has all its tentacles spread across different sectors in terms of even the cluster areas that it wants to achieve. It wants to achieve economic growth, public administration, human capital development, social development, regional development, infrastructure. What else do we need at this time and going forward? I'll give you an example. At the Securities and Exchange Commission, we wrote a capital market master plan, which was meant to run out in 2025. And we just looked at it, that a couple of things have changed. IT, I don't know if everyone remembers, I'm sure, not that I don't know, I'm sure everyone remembers when Nigeria's GDP was rebased. What changed? Entertainment. Back then. Now, IT is taking a front burner. How much are we looking at into that? How much are we even really, really enmeshed into that? We are talking about agric, for example. We've left the shores of just even pushing agric with the narrative of sustainability. What we are even trying to do, or we should be doing as a country, is to enhance, and a couple of things, initiatives from CBN, from the 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗺, Ministry of Agric, Bank of Agric, have been put out. But in the implementation of those, how or what level, if you are praised, to the extent that we even see results. So back to your question and straight answer, Ugo, what should we expect to see? Let's all just look at the National Development Plan. It's in there. And all agencies, all ministries will take away their bits from it, execute, break it down, whether laws needs to be amended, whether rules need to be crafted, whether stakeholder engagement needs to be had, that will be had. I remember when I think during the time of the then minister, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, when VAT was put up for tax, everybody got a letter. I'm sure John Sichuku got a letter. I got a letter saying we've assessed you. I don't know whether it was on LinkedIn or Facebook. They got everybody that we just assessed you, that a managing director of here or one chief operating officer of here. This is what you do, which you ought to do as a responsible citizen. Everybody sat up and started asking if you hadn't been paying your taxes, or even if you had been paying and you didn't have the records, you have it. So I think, Ugo, where we are at now is not to spend more time writing new policies, because I think there's no new invention. We've been living with this problem. I don't want to say over the last 61 years, because I think things didn't get this acute. I won't use the word bad, acute, maybe except later than then. So there have been different papers that have been written, different policies. They've been amended, they've been updated. I think what we should focus on is implementation. And that comes from the government and the citizenry. What we need to do, what the citizenry needs to do, how we can jointly allow this. I'll give you another example. We're talking about infrastructure development. We expect, and government will always try to provide infrastructure. The users of this, and this is part of its job, into creating an enabling environment to foster productivity. But on our side, the citizenry, in a lot of cases, we even resist taxes or paying maybe revenue or tolls. Now, you could attribute that to trust deficits. You could attribute that to mistrust, misplacement of trust, improper communication, or what have you. But everything has to be synergetic. So we all know our place. Government policies need to be driven by who, for who, in respect of what, and what are the objective outcomes. So National Development Plan, I think we should just look at that more keenly and focus on implementing it step by step. I'll pause here for now.
All right, thank you so much for that, Dairo. I like the fact that you brought up NDP, and I've already shared the link there to our participants to download, and that is officially the government document that sort of clearly outlines how they want this economy to grow. Now, one particular aspect of that policy that just came to my head immediately was the 300 or so trillion that the government thinks Nigeria believes Nigeria needs to actualize a lot of the gains of the NDP. And a huge part of that, I think about 80% or so, if not even more, is expected to come from the private sector. So how are we going to attract this sort of investment that we need to drive economic growth? Because that's quite a lot of money. We're looking at over 300 trillion here. So how are we going to do that? Twice our GDP? Is it possible?
To be honest, so it's before I make an direct attempt to answer that question in straight dots, like a dot. Firstly, the government, in terms of the budget deficits have been going on for as long as you could spell deficit in itself. Secondly, the borrowing, we see it growing at an astronomical rate. However, the means to repay is has fast disappeared, to the extent that we are raising more money to even pay interest on the loan we already have.
Correct.
So now, if, I think to be pragmatic about it, 300 trillion, if you look at implementing this on infrastructure alone, on housing alone, on creating viable health platforms, to the extent that, and again, all of this reverberates on things on Forex. The astronomical jump in Forex is just purely demand and supply. We depend because on things externally that puts pressure on the currency because we don't have them here. Health, it depends. Health, education, even food. When it will be the list of items not eligible for the INE window, and you saw toothpicks, wasn't that laughable to every average Nigerian? But it is what it is. It is what it is. It's because they're not even just available. So if we're talking, and I like what Taiwo said, because it's a food for thought, that, okay, looking at even this taxation and even talking about fiscal policy, you might as well just be taxing the people that don't even have any earning power or they're not productive in any way. Just because the infrastructure is not there, they themselves, they don't see the hope of it. However, in all of these things coming, if you're expecting 300 trillion, I think the plan and I think the hope of the government is that enough measures will be put in place to incentivize the private sector to create more than well enough working or enabling environments to enhance its own productivity such that this can be met. And he talked about overregulation as well. We see that even in our own sphere, because as you're trying to regulate this side, something else comes up, which is an extract of what you're trying to regulate. And the world is not static. It is moving, it's developing. So regulation even has to evolve just to make sure it falls within this category. So back to your question, 300 trillion from the private sector. The question is, where else to look?
All right, thank you so much, Dayo. Where else to look? So maybe 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗺 can help us here. 𝗧𝗵𝗺 has a fountain of knowledge. I mean, if you guys don't know who she is, there are a lot of people out there in the Nigerian economic space who understands how some of these things work. And 𝗧𝗵𝗺, I mean, from your experience, we've seen several countries, experience or go through the same kind of challenges that Nigeria has gone through and have come out tops. There's so many of them. Is it Vietnam? Is it Singapore? Is it Thailand? Is it even South Africa or even Ghana next to them? That seem to have been growing at some point before they just had the COVID-19 sort of slowed them down. So what can we learn from these countries that we can immediately implement? Because, there's a lot of learnings. There's some things you can learn that will take 10, 15 years or a lifetime to start to, yield fruit. But what are those things that we can start to implement now, particularly from the next government, so that we can start to see dividend of, we can start to see positive results? 𝗧𝗵𝗺.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. We know what Nairametrics is capable of doing, powering the economy with knowledge, information, insight, and there's nothing as great as that. Thank you so much. And thank you also. It was wonderful listening to all of the speakers before me, Tayo, passionate Tayo, I always call him, Johnson, and Lamido Sek. It was really, very insightful too. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll just talk about the countries that I have pinned down. And a lot of these countries interest me, but there's something very unique and systematic about almost each of them. And I would focus on China, Singapore. I'd also talk on Japan, and I'll talk on South Korea. There are a number of countries we can draw learnings from, but let's even look at a lesson each. Let's talk about China. The interesting thing in China is today we see quite a lot of strength and sophistication around technology, but it will interest you that China actually started its own reform through agriculture. The basic reason why agriculture was important was the recognition of food security, the recognition of moving away from poverty and elevating quite a lot of people from poverty. So China leveraging investments in agriculture, policies on agriculture, created from poverty to prosperity for its own country, for its own citizens, where every single person was encouraged and incentivized to be able to make those investments in agriculture, even before World Bank wrote the blueprint or supported the blueprint for the growth of China. So you can see that these are people who are already looking inwards to see how can we even create the changes and catalyze growth and empowerment for our people. It's not a very easy thing to do, but to have the humility to embrace and empower people where agriculture and food security became a big and major record for China. I find that remarkable. Big, great opportunity also for our country, so much that we can do with agriculture across all of the arid regions that we have. Even every single person has seen that it's huge enterprise for all. Okay, so let's also talk about Singapore, another country that I'm super passionate about. Singapore is almost from zero to something. What are some of the things that drove Singapore's success? The biggest thing that drove Singapore's success is visionary leadership. And of course, we all know and have seen what Singapore did. They deliberately and systematically tied politics to economic growth, because you need political stability to actually have economic growth. And in pushing all of the political stability, it was very clear that you cannot have economic growth without free market. So Singapore was very particular about creating free market principles where labor was possible. They were just very open with regards to immigrant labor. Anybody can come from any part of the world and live in Singapore, grow in Singapore, develop in Singapore. The labor was available, so it wasn't an issue. There was also the low tax rate. Singapore totally recognized that it did not have to have a huge tax burden that would crush individuals and crush organizations and crush growth with regards to making it possible to also attract even international foreign investors. And so it grew on that because it was very important to actually keep the country attracted to investors all over the world and encourage businesses also to thrive and grow. Now, Singapore was very deliberate about infrastructure. It totally recognized the need to build infrastructure. And it will amaze you that one of the biggest was public health, transportation, and transportation and housing. Now, think about the things that are very basic to every human being everywhere in the world, almost making it seem like a socialist strategy. And with that regards, you can find housing. Almost everybody can own a house, and we are paying pittance to government over a long period of time. And government is developing this and say, in 30 years, you can pay over this period, you are not crushed. And what is very important to human beings? Shelter. So imagine if you've got great shelter, you're not thinking about where to lay your herd. Then you are also able to innovate. You're able to create businesses and catalyze and stimulate economies. Now think about what they did with public health. Health is wealth, we all know that, isn't it? So government has greater responsibility for subsidizing health so that you are not just dying out of poverty, but you are getting access to health, which is really very important. And if we talk about transportation, we can't discount that, moving from one place to another. So if you think about the stage we are around here with the transportation and huge opportunities untapped and unmined, we have only just very recently resuscitated the rail lines, remember? The kind of things that our parents took pride in speaking about when they walked when they had to go from Lagos to Kaduna on postings, on work, on inspections and supervision. And we used to think about how those trains work. But today, people like me, I have boarded, I have felt it, I have taken trips to Ibadan, to 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗧, to, just to see the feel. So, but then we are still about 2%. Look at the marine waters and opportunities around that are untapped. But Singapore was deliberate of ensuring that transportation is huge. Then now think about accountability with Singapore. It was the major value for the country. So you are a public servant. You are a public servant because you really, truly, deeply want to serve, not because you want to amass wealth. So Singapore is not a place to deal or to take the money that belongs to many. It is not a place to even think about. It's not a place to even think about corruption. It never happened. So you can see all of these sort of structures that countries have put in place. So I'd also love to speak about Japan. Japan crushed to nothing, crushed to zero after the World War II. Both their military, both the service sector, both the industrialization they had achieved. But Japan also recognized that they could be self-sufficient, grew their island nation, developed their security all over again, built their walls around them, and started to look inwards for the things that they can export to the world. Sony is coming out of Japan. Honda is coming out of Japan. Name it, they moved immediately to manufacturing. So if you think about the way that manufacturing has elevated Japan and given them the opportunity to command respect, everywhere, any day, anytime, there is always a Japan in all of us. Growing up, even up until today, there is a Japan in all of us. But the last that I would like to leave us with is Hong Kong. And I'm so passionate about Hong Kong. The economy of Hong Kong was built on enterprise and entrepreneurship. I listened to those so passionately when Mr. Johnson, so keenly when Mr. Johnson-Chukwu was speaking to enterprise and SMEs. Again, a place in Nigeria where we have huge opportunities. The millennials and Gen Zs are not interested in 9 to 5 and all of the things that we're doing. They are interested in creativity, incubation. They are creating fashion. They're creating music. Music has become a larger export, not because of you or I, or because of, but they totally recognize that, all of our talents we can export. So for me, Music is an enterprise in Nigeria, employing huge number of people, whether you're listening to 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗺, whether you're looking at every single person is huge value chain with regards to the industry that they are growing, from producers to music artists to the suppliers of the resources to equipment and all of that, huge market. So what then are the opportunities? What can we learn from Hong Kong? Whether it is the entrepreneurs in the agricultural sector, whether the entrepreneurs in the manufacturing sector, whether they are in the entrepreneurs that are in the entertainment sector, let's invest in them. So I have just tried to pick a bit from each country, agriculture from China, which we wouldn't ordinarily think about in 2022, but I just plotted that so we can remember where they were coming from. Japan and its prowess around manufacturing, which again, one of our speakers has mentioned, you cannot do without manufacturing. Singapore, fantastic structures, government backed with policy and all of that. And then of course, Hong Kong, our passionate country and entrepreneur. 90% of Nigerians are entrepreneurial, whether you like it or not. So we already have it. So let's grow the enterprise in us and begin to create great business opportunities. America is built on capitalism, and that's the reason you see a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of corporations, a lot of economic strength coming out of that. So let's build our entrepreneurs so that we can also have those sort of self-sufficiency. I think I'll stop for now. 4 are great. I admire them. I speak about them passionately all the time. There are many more, but we could stop at this time. Thank you.
Oh my God, I actually didn't want you to stop. Fantastic, insights there, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗺. Always a pleasure listening to you. You heard it, guys. There's Singapore, there's Hong Kong, there's Japan, and there's China. And the funny thing, we have Nigeria has similarities to this country in the way that they are basically set up. And I also agree with you, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗺, 100%. Public health, transportation, housing, focus on those things. And I think that, we'll start to see a semblance of the sort of economy that we all aspire for in Nigeria. By the way, the chat section is on. Drop your chats, drop your comments there. You also have questions, drop it there. The guys at the back end are working assiduously to make sure that we pick some of those questions and then ask them at the Q&A session. Almost 1 hour already. My God, I feel like we just started a few minutes ago. At this point, I'm going to yield to 𝗏𝗏, who is going to take the second session of this amazing webinar. And you don't want to miss this session because we're speaking Forex now. And 𝗏𝗏 is going to do a fantastic job of that. 𝗏𝗏, over to you, man.
Yeah, Ugo, thanks for giving me the touchy subject of Forex. Very touchy stuff, Ugo. The panelists, fantastic stuff, really great. 𝗧𝗏 said millennials and Gen Z are not interested in 9 to 5. Are they interested in agriculture? I mean, that's the topic for another day. Okay, so yes, I
can tell you they are. I can tell you they are because I've got
agriculture,
quite a lot of mentor in that space, and I have. So if you are very digital, check Pretty Miss Farmer. Check. I can tell you on Instagram. I can send you right now a minimum of 10 links of big farmers, and they are proudly farmers. And they are not even more than 30, 35 years.
They send them over. We are going to profile them on Nairametrics. People need to.
I definitely
will. Need to know that.
I definitely will. I definitely will.
All right, thanks. 𝗏𝗏, what's wrong with your network? It looks like you got frozen because you just got outed. All right, guys. So let's. While 𝗏𝗏 is coming on board, let me just come in here for him. While he sorts out his network issues. This is Nigeria now, so we all understand. So we're just going to go straight to the section. I think, 𝗏𝗏, the question is for you. We've seen challenges with FX over the last few years. And this time around, I think we're caught by COVID-19. And I think some of the policies of the government that sort of, gave us that 360 kind of stopped. We called it 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺 banking in Nairametrics, where the government was paying high interest rates just to attract, Forex. But, very expensive policy, and the government at CBN at some point had to unwind that. And we've all seen the catastrophic effect that has had on the economy. So what should we be doing now if you were the CBN governor? What would be the next steps to at least give us semblance of a stable exchange rate? We do know that government officials are probably in here listening. People who are looking to vie for the next administration are here listening as well. Assuming that they are listening to you, what should we be doing?
Thank you very much. Very important question. And I have to start by saying There are no easy answers. There are no silver bullets. The reality is that the forex that we earn is not sufficient to meet our needs. I mean, our forex need if we do nothing. So if you allow everybody, there are guys who are importing toothpicks anyway. So, but then it's not very different from what the rest of the world, are facing. So it's not peculiar to us. Yet there are countries that have successfully managed it a lot better than us. So maybe just to speak to some specifics. The first thing I'll do if I were the CBN governor is this policy about, you have about 43 items that are prohibited from import. Sorry, not from import, from assessing effects for import. So legally speaking, those items are not contraband. They're okay to be imported, but you can't assess effects. And what the CBN is trying to do is to manage the little effects they have for what they consider to be important, right? But the problem is, even for those who are not on that list of 43 items, they are not getting the effects. I was speaking to manufacturers, recently, and many of them said you'll be lucky if you get 5% of what you want. The guys who are importing diesel are saying to me that at best they get 30% from the official market. About 70% of the money they need to import diesel is coming from the parallel market, which is why, one of the reasons, not the only reason why the price of diesel is over 800 naira. What government needs to do is not to seek to use monetary policy to solve all problems. It is to do a combination of policy measures and have a handshake between fiscal and monetary policy. How should that work? One, allow everyone who wants to import anything, including toothpicks, to go to the market, official market, to go and bid. But because you want to discourage the importation of toothpicks, then you impose import duties. It can even be 300%. So the effects will be the same thing as what you're having now without creating the market dislocation that you're having in the FX market. Because again, we say we want to encourage non-export, right? So we can end FX. And what if I say to you that government in this 2022, beginning of 2022, issued a VAT modification order that makes your exports to no longer be zero rated. Zero rated without going into technicalities is when you export goods, any VAT that you have incurred in your country is refunded to you so that your goods can be competitive. Nigeria decided to do the opposite. The same country where they're looking for exports to end FX. Then on top of that, you also have Nigeria will say, when you export and you make some money, bring it and you must give it to government. Now, these are guys who have imported their raw materials, machineries, equipment input at 615. They will now bring the money and go and give it to government at 415. Who does that? It doesn't make sense. Now, these problems we have inflicted on ourselves. I started by saying there's a problem, right? But the ones we've added on top of it ourselves, we need to eliminate them. Let's make sure that the parallel market becomes a black market where only drug dealers, the politicians buying money to go and pay bribe. Let those guys go there and let it be 1,000. Every other person should be in the official market. Let the market forces determine the rate. Government can intervene by supplying and buying and supplying FS as the need may arise. Plus, on top of that, if we can address, crude theft. Crude theft is not something an individual, Nairametrics cannot solve that problem, right? Only government can solve that problem because they have all the powers to do it. Today, we are producing almost 600,000 barrels below our quota. Just imagine we should be printing dollars now, literally. And once we're able to address that, the Naira exchange rate will stabilize, right? And in fact, we would appreciate. And that will help you deal with imported inflation, which means inflation will go down and poverty will reduce. More businesses and companies will be able to expand and utilize their capacity, creating employment, increasing GDP. It almost looks like to me like this is so simple and low hanging. It will not cost us money, but we have to be willing to do it.
Thank you so much, Taiwo. And there's so much you said there. Because of time, we could focus on FX for the next 1 hour. So but thank you very much for your comments. Let me quickly bring in 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗲 thoughts on the FX situation. Mr. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗲, what are the immediate policy actions that can stem this rapid depreciation of the exchange rate that we're seeing? We'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rotus. I doubt if there are there's anything anybody can do to stop the depreciation in the immediate. And why I say difficult to say there's anything anybody can do is that currently your import, your terms of trade are negative, your balance of payment is negative. So you are currently importing more than you're exporting because of some of the issues around crude oil exports. Crude oil production and crude oil export. So if you're having a consistent balance of a trade deficit and balance of payment deficit, your currency will come under pressure and will continue to depreciate, irrespective of whatever policy you have. As we speak today, virtually all global currencies have depreciated against the US dollar. You observe that euro is almost at parity with US dollar today. From a high of close to 1.5, it dropped to 1.3 and it's almost 1 to 1. Pound is just marginally above the US dollar. Then look at countries like Turkish lira. It has depreciated by over 80%. So you find out a lot of global currencies other than Russian ruble have suffered some depreciation against the dollar. And we are not an exception. And ours is also worsened by the fact that, like I said earlier, where crude oil production is declining, and then we are importing more than we're currently exporting. In fact, we are importing refined petroleum products at elevated prices due to global political crisis or war between Russia and Ukraine, whereas we're not enjoying the benefit we should have been enjoying as a crude oil producing nation. So that's, as it stands today, there's nothing anybody can do, irrespective of whatever policy you adopt that would forestall a depreciation of the local currency. But I think we should dwell on what we should do in the long run to have a more stable currency, a stronger currency. Because one of the things you should do is that if you realize that, look, I can't stop the roof from my roof from leaking today because I can't touch it while fix it while the rain is falling, then the next thing you ask yourself is that when the rain stops, what should I do? Or what should I do in the medium to long term so that my roof will stop leaking anytime it rains? And I think the key thing is that we must be a producing economy. We must have, I spoke earlier on the need for us to be a manufacturing hub. If you do not have anything to export, if you do not have not just things to export, you must also have quality products to export, then your currency will always come under pressure at any whiff of global economic crisis. And that's where we are today. We're basically still exporting crude or extractive industry products since independence over 6 years ago. I mentioned earlier our population in 1960 was only 45 million. Today we are 218 million. And we're still exporting extractive industry. We're still want to export agricultural products without any benefication, without adding value to the product we're exporting. The worst of it is that we're exporting crude and importing refined petroleum products. Just for whatever it is worth, assuming we're still producing about 2 million to 2.2 million barrels of crude today, and at the same time, we also have buoyant and vibrant refinery industry. And we're exporting crude. Our open quota for August is about 1.8 million barrels a day. Our open quota for July was 1.779 million barrels a day. So assuming we are just even exporting as much as open quota, remember that in May, we only exported about 1.024 million barrels, which OPEC said we increased about 1.22 million barrels in the month of June. Just take it that we're just going to export 1.8 million barrels a day. And we are also exporting refined petroleum products because given that we produce crude, we should also have refineries and be exported. Today, we'll be spending to the bank. We should actually be praying, not that we wish that the war between Russia and Ukraine continues, that we can build our reserve. Let me give you an instance. When the war started, the Western economies thought that sanctions, I don't support the war, felt it was not wise. It wasn't right for you, the stronger people, to take out weaker people. But Russia has benefited from that war. Russian economy still remains one of the most vibrant, even stronger than the German economy that is the epicenter of the European economy. Why is it so? Because they have a very broad productive base. Western countries have left Russia. Russian currency have strengthened. Russia is the only country in the world that has reduced interest rates from a 20% increase in February to 9.5%. The concerns of Russia today is that its export commodities are getting too expensive because of the strengthening of its currency, that they may become uncompetitive. But take that back to Nigeria, which is where we are talking of. Today, we have several products. We have competitive advantage. But we've not done anything to improve the benefication, to improve the value chain. We only did that, and we have proof of concept we can replicate in several sectors. We did that in cement industry. Today, Nigeria is a net exporter of cement. We used to be a net importer of cement. There's what they call the 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺𝗺 in the 70s, because cement import blocked the Apapa Wharf and made it difficult to bring in other goods. Today, we're a net exporter of cement because we came up with a policy that one incentivizes investment in cement production, and that led to where we are today. We can look at several sectors where we have competitive advantage. Palm oil, we are still importing, we are able to produce enough to lower demand. Crude palm oil. We have one of the most arable land for palm production. We're not exploiting that. I can go on and on and on. We talked about the cassava industry value chain. We abandoned it after Obasanjo left. So the key thing is that we must build an economy that is a net exporter of value goods. And I repeat, value goods. We must only not be a producer of value goods. We must make sure that we have an economy that can produce those goods and services at prices or at costs that are competitive or comparative with what obtains elsewhere in the world. When we do that, we're going to build an economy that will have buoyant foreign earning capacity, minimal demand for import, because we can produce most of those things locally, and we're going to have a stable exchange rate, and possibly we're going to have appreciation in our currency.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. A very honest assessment of there's no policy right now that can stem the tide due to what we're seeing. Look at you mentioned the dollar index. You're looking at all other currencies that are suffering against the dollar. So it's going to be long-term. You use Russia as an example, widen your export base, and over the long term, you can possibly see an appreciation in your currency. Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Maybe bring back in Mr. 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺. Lamidou, can you point to the factors that are driving, I guess, explosion that we're seeing in the black market premium? Should we ignore the black markets like the CBN says?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the first thing, I have to really struggle for my authentic identity on this platform. Number one, my name is Dayo Obisom, and I'm representing Lamido Yuguda. Two, I am an executive commissioner with this SEC as commissioner of operations, and no longer the MD of Greenwich. So that said, no
apologies, sir. Apologies, sincere apologies.
So I mean, just living in another person's shadows. Now, this is not a question to waste a lot of time on answers about. It has been answered. When you are spending almost between 500 and 600 billion to medical tourism, and the amount you can get every quarter, depending on how well, when you apply to the CBN, is limited to a maximum, was it $10K or $4,000? There's a mismatch. When you spend almost 15 billion, between 15 to 20 billion annually, I think there was even some write-up from Nairametrics that I read, I think it was Nairametrics earlier on importing arms to tackle your security issues. I mean, that puts a lot of pressure. Mr. Johnson Chukwu said, and even Taiwo did said, and everybody will agree, not just because they said, we are earning far less than we require to import things. But now the question is, what are the things you import? You're spending a lot on education. For example, in the first 3 months of 2022, December to February, I think one of the statistics I have says Nigerians have spent over $200 million in paying fees abroad. I think it was quoted from a CBN report as well. So all of these things keep piling. You are spending more. So that means for your day-to-day livelihood, you depend more on imports. The imports required foreign exchange. On the home front, you are not earning enough because productivity is low. Productivity is low for so many reasons. Infrastructure deficit, not even gap, is yawning. The widening gap between the tops and the bottoms, that means the higher earning class and low earning class, is really widening. There's unemployment. The kind of quality of things we produce, they are not of export grade. And even if they were of export grade and infrastructure was there, if there was road from a farm and there was a silo built somewhere and there are gunmen on the farm, will you be able to even do the farming in the first place? So I think we shouldn't even belabor the issues. So, I mean, they are all around us. We depend far too much. And because things we need are not available at home. A lot more people, I mean, look at across just Togo and Ghana, there's been a far more increasing number, even to Kenya. That's East Africa. The ticket to Kenya is akin to tickets to London Heathrow. People go for secondary schooling, Nigerians, in droves to Ghana, in droves to Kenya. So let's not even look about the advanced economies. Even within Africa, you're putting a lot more pressure. A lot of university applicants apply to South Africa, to Egypt. So it is anywhere but home. It's almost like that. So that definitely will put pressure. And to the extent that you are not even earning enough, I mean, a lot has been said around productivity. What can be done to enhance it? What policy we need to put focus on in order to drive it upwards. But these are like clear things that expectedly will put pressure on any country's currency. What have you? I mean, look at it now. We are talking about euro, about being at par with US dollars. Our own, and I read a report recently that Nigeria makes it as one of the top 30 economies. Yet the World Bank is saying our inflation rate is about one of the top 10 in the highest ones. There's been jump in those economies, but they've been reversed for foreign direct investments. People are taking their money out at every little opportunity they see, but they are not bringing so much in because there's no clarity that they'll be able to get the monies out. I know I read a report recently that even buying a flight ticket out of Nigeria is more expensive than maybe buying a ticket from the originating country coming to Nigeria. Why? Because they're building a premium, because they don't know when they'll be able to repatriate even the actual money, talk less of any profit. So back to your question, a lot of things we depend, I mean, we are spending the currency we don't have far and depend on it much more for basic things, education, health, food, protection of our lives, and more than we even earn, because the things we even manage to produce, if they don't rot, the people that are driving them get shot. If they don't get shot and finally make it to the ports, they don't meet the grade to even get exported. So I'll leave it at here.
Thank you, 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺 Obisan, Executive Commissioner Operations, SEC. I have to emphasize that again, just to make sure that I do not make the error again. Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate your insights there. There's so much that needs to be done. Let me quickly bring in 𝗧𝗵𝗼𝗺. 𝗧𝗵𝗺, the word crisis gets bandied about a lot. Is Nigeria heading towards a currency crisis, or are we already there? Well, what's your assessment?
Of course, we're already there. We're already there with exchange rates that are astronomical. We're already there at the growth of this exchange rate over the last 3 years. We've all seen it. And so that's a question every one of us know. And that's also something all of us have touched around. But for me, I'd rather want to focus on what we can do. The most important thing is to focus on how to deal with the problems rather than dwell on the problems. And then a few things come to my mind, and I just want to keep them basic and simple because they are easy and scalable. Again, I'm going to start and emphasize on our moving from consumerism to production. That's huge and important. As a nation, we have become a dumping ground for the whole world. So every single one of us look left, right, center, every single thing is imported. Even water is imported into Nigeria. If you go to the open markets, you'll be amazed that somebody really agreed and allowed that water should be imported into a country where every single person can even produce, and because that's so basic and everybody needs one. Now, if we begin to look at the trajectory of our nation, we can draw inspiration from there, and we know that we do not only have ingenuity, we have capabilities. And I'll tell you, we've talked today about Japan coming out of the World War II and have become superheroes around the entire Asia. At some point in Nigeria, between 1967 to 1970, people, individuals in this country produced war weapons. We know that, right? Locally produced war weapons. So that means there is also that sophisticated mind that we can also be top level with regards to production, with regards to manufacturing. And I'm not just talking about coupling components of things around locally and say, well, automobiles were produced, war weapons were produced. So if things as sophisticated as that could have been 50 years ago produced here, that means we have all that it takes to be able to make such investments, grow develop the ingenuity that is required. Education is very critical. So let's truly invest in people so that they can not only just be educated, but they can also apply whatever it is that they have learned. After all of the schools in Nigeria have engineering departments. So there is really no reason why we would not be able to manufacture, create, and begin to export. Another basic thing, as easy, as simple as that may be, is food export. Let's even begin to think about the fact that we should create sufficiency, so drive food sufficiency, drive food security, as well as export. We can't pretend that the export part of it is not important. It's very important because even countries like China right now is making garri for the US. We do know that. So China comes to Nigeria, buys up our farms, plants our cassava, process them, and label them elubo. They become exports from China all the way to America, and they're having foreign direct, they're having exchange, they're having investments, they're also having return on investments. Now, there is no reason why we are not able to do that because we have every single thing that it takes to drive food sufficiency as well as drive food export. Now, we need to start to even look at nations and countries. Malaysia coming to Nigeria, they take our oil, process, and bring it back to us as oil. They take our palm nuts, process, and bring it back to us. We have other countries everywhere, everybody is producing one thing or the other out of the back of our house. Growing up, we all saw the granite pyramids. We all read social studies and they were edifices. Where are the pyramids? We cannot see them. So nothing stops us from truly beginning to look at food export. Now, besides food export, and the reason I mentioned food export, because now I'm beginning to tie my discussions back again to where I started with regards to what we can learn from Asia. So manufacturing, just like Japan did, we can see it, we have the capability, we have done it even in the time of war, similar to Japan's story. Food export, we have seen what China did, totally re-engineered the agriculture and became big exporters of food. Now, I would also speak to something that is really very critical. As little as we may think about it, if you take a look at it, very proudly, I'm wearing Nigerian-made fabric, all the way made by women in a city called Itoku, which is in Abeokuta. And whether you like it or not, this can sell anywhere in the world, any single place in the world. Is becoming a piece for fashion and a piece for export. And whether we like it or not, one day, someday, you're probably going to see Louis Vuitton take it up and start to manufacture it and start to sell it back to us in $5,000, $10,000. And why are we not going to be able to create structure around that export? So it's fashionable, it's fashion forward. I feel great, I look great, and I do know that. But I know also that there are so many entrepreneurs who are doing this. So that we have the Export Promotion Council. This is the time to begin to look at these big, as little as they may be. If manufacturing is too big, tall order. If food production is too big, tall order. Get around those people who have made it possible for us to even begin to export fashion. Whether we like it or not, it's a big opportunity and it's a low-hanging fruit. All we need to do is to support the individuals in that space. And remember again, I'm taking us to SMEs, because I can't stop talking about SMEs. As little as they are, invest in them, they'll catalyze and stimulate the economy, and that begins to work on foreign exchange, because then we are beginning to earn dollars. We're not consistently exporting, importing, because so long as we consistently import, there would always be pressure on it. So, but if individuals are able to create employment, export, and see the pride, and it doesn't even end in fashion. Every single thing that we do is exportable. Now, last, which is very important to me, as we leave crude oil and we begin to look at these things that can give us alternative opportunity for earning foreign exchange, let's also begin to think about building a nation that there will be a pride around us. Let Made in Nigeria become a great story. Let Made in Nigeria become what people associate with top quality. And how would it happen? It's through policies, creating service, quality, investments in the individuals who do this so that they can scale. You cannot drive quality without support. So people are able to drive policy. Through policy, people are able to learn more, do more, produce better. I mean, if you go into Aba and think about the things that come out of Aba, just begin to bring and infuse. Again, I won't stop talking about the Export Promotion Council. They can work collaboratively with all of these opportunities and drive the sort of quality that everywhere you go, there is a pride in these products that are finding their ways into the countries abroad. So we need to play at the global scale. And playing at the global scale, we must not continue to look at oil. So I've talked about opportunity for global play around agriculture. We have that opportunity around all of the things that we produce around it. Let's even flip the narrative and stop being the dumping location and become an exporting country. Yeah.
Fantastic stuff, 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗺. You are walking, what is it now? Walking the talk by wearing Made in Nigeria and talking about how we can support SMEs, and you do look good, as you said. I agree with that for sure. Thank you for your thoughts. How does the time fly? I want to quickly bring back in Johnson Chukwu and Taiwo, because I need to ask you both on RT200, the central bank's policy. They want to raise Taiwo is smiling already, $200 billion over the next 3 to 5 years. I don't, the time is just, you folks need to see it. But very quickly, somebody in the comment section was like, we've been talking productivity. How can you be productive when in Lagos you're spending almost half your life in traffic? But very quickly, Taiwo, please, and then I'm going to go just quick after you. Taiwo, RT200, your quick thoughts. Can we do it? $200 billion in 3 to 5 years.
So I'll be very blunt with you. We can't do it. We like numbers. We like big numbers. Many of them are not evidence-based, like 350 trillion for the National Development Plan. I think we need to make this country work for everyone. Once you start identifying a group of people that you want to facilitate so you can get, why can't you just make that thing a policy that applies to everyone? There's nothing wrong if you have those kind of intervention, but it should not become the norm. We're making what should be an exception now become the norm. So we're targeting different people, and then the rest of us are just there. And before you know it, it becomes rent-seeking. If you know someone who is somewhere, you get something, others don't get it. It creates more problems than solutions. We can make it work for everyone to end effects, whether you're small or big. We can also try and address some of the internal problems we created. And I'll give you one very quick example. So as of today, the law says if you embark on any transactions, you have to pay the taxes in the currency of transaction. Again, that was a policy that was done not using evidence, because it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So this conference we are having now is on Zoom. Chances are that Nairametrics paid for this, right? Otherwise, it was a free one. They would have bounced us after 30 minutes. Now, let's say Nairametrics needs to pay $1,000. They go to the market and bid for it because they don't print dollars. When they finish paying that, they'll go back to that market to go and bid for VAT components and withholding tax component. This can easily add up to about 20%. Now, when they manage to get it, right, now the 1,000 was an expedient demand. The additional 20% is unnecessary. It's hitting up that market. When they do get it, they'll give it to government. And what's the point? Getting the demand and then giving it to government, sometimes at a very wide margin. Get it at 600, you give it to them at 400. You can take that away almost immediately. And that would easily ease about 15 to 20% of the pressure in the market. Then we have to focus on how do we design our FX policy, no matter how difficult it might be, to address the inefficiencies we've created and the incentive for arbitrage, which is making it even more difficult for us to have, harmony between those rates. So that's where I'll put it. I don't think the RT200 will solve our problem, but maybe, maybe not entirely bad to have.
Thank you, Taiwo. Johnson Chukwu, real quick, same question to you. RT200, can we get $200 billion non-oil exports in 3 to 5 years?
I think Taiwo has already answered that appropriately. But let me just add a few things to it. The first question I will ask is that which sectors are we going to, what products are we going to be exporting to earn that foreign exchange of 200 billion? Which sectors will produce those products? How competitive would that sector be in terms of global export market, in terms of quality of product and cost of products? And if we can't drill down a vision or to specific deliverable, to specific deliverable, like I said, then the vision is basically a wishful thinking or a feel-good statement. There is no way Nigeria will leapfrog from current export level to a point. I mean, total export in the first quarter of this year was about 7 trillion naira. And that's an exchange rate of over 400 naira to $1. So if you look at it properly, so what are we going to be exporting? We really don't have those products. I've said we need to do the heavy lifting. If we really want to restructure this economy to be a more balanced economy in terms of foreign exchange earnings, we need to start now and give ourselves 15 to 20 years to achieve that. It cannot be a light bulb effect. You can just put on a switch and the whole place will get
I think we might have lost
He's
Johnson.
back. He's
I'm
back.
back.
Okay, go ahead.
Just to re-emphasize the fact we don't have a reliable infrastructure supply in the country. So, but given what has just happened, we need to build the infrastructure that will support manufacturing. Without infrastructure, our cost of doing business will be high. Our cost of production remains high. We cannot be productive, competitive in the global export market. So all these ideas feel good. The first thing the central bank has also said that I think from next year, if I'm wrong, correct me, that the banks are going to source all their FX. The central bank will cease selling FX through the banks. Is that correct? So we're waiting for next year to come and see where the banks will source the FX from. We still import, our foreign exchange is coming from crude oil exports. And that is not going to change in the next couple of years until we build that foundation that will allow us to become a more productive economy. I think we need to just accept what is the reality and what is a desirable objective, or it's a desirable vision. Maybe we're saying in the next 10 years, we can achieve that, but it has to be driven by appropriate policies, ferociously and diligently implemented.
Thank you so much, Johnson Chukwu, for that. Thank you all for your thoughts on foreign exchange. I'm going to yield it back to 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺, the big issue of unemployment. Every one of us knows somebody looking for a job. 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺, please, it's all yours.
I'm looking for a job too, just in case. Just kidding. All right, so I mean, amazing discussion so far, and I did pick a lot of nuggets from the discussion around forex, and a lot of the speakers here spoke to export. We need to export more of value goods, particularly. I think 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺 and Johnson spoke to that eloquently. And then something else that I also picked up from Taiwo was how we probably need to just do away with all these ban lists and all that, and then maybe focus more on taxing some of those items and just create a market where people can go in and bid for forex. That's exactly what's happening in the black market. Interestingly, some BDC operators I spoke to said that, look, they also don't like this sort of market that we're in. They want a market where people can transparently transact so that we can have the sort of price discovery that we need to actually determine what the real exchange rate is. But before we go on employment, I just want to come to Dio on export. Maybe just quickly address the issue of capital formation when it comes to export. Now, one way that some countries have sort of done it, and I think 𝗧𝗵𝗼𝗺, touched on that a bit, is attracting investments into the country. So, for example, China is not an export hub because they just woke up one morning and decided to start exporting. China did that because they can attract the likes of Tesla, the likes of Apple into that country, and then they start to manufacture finished good value goods, as Johnson did put it, and then start to export. So there are some moves that 𝗧𝗵𝗼𝗺 has done over the last few years. Could you maybe highlight on some of those things so that our participant can actually know those policies, deliberate ones that 𝗧𝗵𝗼𝗺 has done to attract investment into the country so that we can have or create some sort of a manufacturing hub as well? Dairo.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's the essence. 𝗧𝗵𝗼𝗺 does two things primarily, is to regulate the capital market and to develop it. So this is part of our own developmental initiative or our mandate to do. So first is, if you're going to encourage foreign participation, there are two ways. So there's foreign portfolio investment and there's foreign direct investment. So the one of trading securities is about the portfolio. Now, in your portfolio, you're talking about liquidity, how structured the market is. The person coming, the foreigner coming to invest, knowing that the infrastructure, I'm talking of now market infrastructure, not the roads, ports and airports or what have you, that when they come, the infrastructure are there in terms of settlement. Now, and to even ease their source of investment they try to make. Now, over the years, there are different things that have caught up with us as an economy in terms of world development. And I'll use fintechs, for example. Now there's a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk. And even in the Q&A chats, I've seen one or two questions around crypto assets, what the SEC is doing, what CBN is doing. Now you read different reports and gives you different statistics. That Nigeria, and I'll just bandy some figures around quickly. Now, in the mutual fund, that is a collective investment space, which is just like the 𝗧𝗵𝗼𝗺 where people contribute money just to make investment. We've been talking about between less than 500,000, users. Now that gives an indication of your financial or capital market inclusion vein or measurement or a metric. Now, the top three, I think top four fintech groups, by the time we met with them sometime in May last year, they came and gave a report that they already have about almost 600,000, and they have been only 13 months in operation as at that time. And before then, or about that time, we were seeing that the average age of people that make investments in Nigeria, I mean, you're talking of Nigerians, right, was over 50 years old. So I won't use a dying population. That's like an aging population. And each hour, or let me say each day, someone is attaining 40 or 50. So that means each day, that population of youthful incursion or involvement is shrinking. So what that means is, if we continued in this trajectory, maybe in the next 15 years, there will be no market because everybody will be too old to even trade online, and all the younger people are not doing anything. However, when we looked more into the statistics for the crypto trading, crypto asset trading, we found that over 67% thereabout with them, where the youth population definitely below 29 years old. So as opposed to the initial postulation that, all the monies, people are not in the market because investable income was absent. It is actually that the techies or the younger people, the Gen Z, are more interested in instruments like cryptos. Now, is it about the instrument or the level of service? I don't know. I came at the time, so I'm part of the mid-age ones. When you come, you are still using computers. But now, anything that takes longer than 30 seconds to load for the Gen Zs is taking too long already. You understand? So that speaks to quality in terms of a service delivery, leveraging technology. So at the 𝗧𝗵𝗼𝗺, we identified you have three things to do. is either you embrace this technology and regulate it, and just speaks to what I think Mr. John Chukwu had already said, said earlier on. Look at it, embrace it, then regulate it. Ignore it and it keeps happening, or you ban it. When you say you ban it, you just move them further underground. And same thing for like crowdfunding. I mean, we saw, it started with the agri or commodity-based crowdfunding. Somebody just said, I have a farm in Ekwe, and people were just putting in money until maybe some bad eggs came there and saw it as an avenue. We looked at it that this is a gap somewhere, because it is not about just the investment that is being made at that time. It is the opportunity cost, because every money that is lost to a fraudster is 1 naira short of what would have been invested in the capital market or in a productive sector. And again, it has a multiplier effect, because they will tell their stories to others who wouldn't even come there as well. So at the SEC, several things have been done and have been done. The crowdfunding rule is one of the things we have done just to regulate that sector when anybody wants to raise money. And this speaks to SMEs, because a lot of things have been said by the unique person, that the singular lady we have on the panel. And she's been talking passionately about MSMEs. Johnson Chukwu have been talking passionately about MSMEs. But these MSMEs, because they are small, infrastructure doesn't support them. The access to financing is almost prohibitive. So they tend to turn to friends and family, or just raise money from the crowd. And that's what crowdfunding, but however, we saw a couple of bad actors coming into that, thus, having a negative effect on that source of financing. So we created the crowdfunding rules, and that is coming up. Now we've started registering platforms. I mean, a couple of people have applied to us for registration. For the fintech group, there are so many discussions, initiatives going on in that platform, that area. Because one, they are offering services, because a lot of them just want to offer services to cure existing problems, or to just give opportunity. I mean, you speak to a lot of them and it's about democratizing wealth. But how do you help them harness it such that it's well regulated, the investors are protected as well, and the negative narrative doesn't get pushed before it gets really too popular? So we started looking into it, amending our rules, creating opportunity for some of them. Some of them, you got digital sub-brokers, for example. So they run on a platform. They are just connecting A to B, and a broker goes on finally to execute the transaction on the floor. You've got digital portfolio managers. So as opposed to me in the days of when I was a full asset manager, carrying my briefcase, going to speak to clients A, B, C, and D, there are now opportunities where people just have, through algorithm or through a system, configure, ask different questions, and they can quickly churn out asset management or portfolio management advice. So those are some of the things that we are doing and will keep doing, because it is evolving. I think the increasing question we as an agency ask ourselves is, how do we contribute into making things better? And that's why stakeholder engagement keeps increasing. Because you can only say you imagine what they are going through, but until you speak to the person wearing the shoes and they tell you, okay, this is where we are at, and you have the opportunity to tell them that, okay, this is what the law permits. What do we need to do? And just at this kind of platform, I've been seeing a lot of questions, which I hope we'll have enough time to address, so that it's a joint and collective effort into making things come into fruition, to reality. Like all these MSMEs we're talking about. What if imagine if government says all NYSC booths must be made in Aba. All government officials, even if you are wearing a suit, it must be made in Aba. And every occasion, every decoration in every hall for government function must be made from Tire Dye direct. I mean, we're talking about exporting. We're already exporting entire entertainment on a large scale. Over the last 2 months, what has been more popular than the Forbes magazine is shutting down concert centers by our own local artists. Houston shut down. Madison Square Garden shut down. What are these people earning? Are they earning pesos or naira? They're earning dollars. Do you understand what I mean? So these are, but in order to make it more deliberate, an effort, just as Lady Chida said, we need to steer the conversation towards reality and what is practical at this time. What is reality and what is practical at this time? So I think my own subscription is, and I really agree with things on some of the comments on the RX and maybe the funding of some of the things on NDP about the reality of it. But the low-hanging fruits, the ones that are right next to us, what are we doing to facilitate them? If there are policies that need to be amended, then let us come around the table, agree what needs to be amended, make the necessary amendments, and we move on to the next chapter. I think I'll leave it here for now. Ugo.
Thank you so much, Dara, for this.
I think you're muted. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dara, for this important nuggets. I really did appreciate a lot of the comments that you made. And by the way, guys, we shared an important policy document that 𝗧 put up recently on how to attract investment, or how they plan to help facilitate investment inflows into the capital market. And so I go to you, 𝗧𝗵𝗺. This is one topic that I know that you're very, very passionate about. You've been a huge advocate of ending unemployment in Nigeria, particularly for the youth. So I know you've had a lot of ideas, but let's use this platform, to also propagate some of those ideas that you've had. Share with us, how can youth unemployment and youth underemployment be addressed in a scalable manner? You've seen the government try or toy with a number of policies, but from your own unique perspective, what do we need to do now? Because the youth can't wait. We've seen a lot of them leave this country every single day. I was on the flight the other day to Dubai, and I saw a Nigerian youth going to Australia for education. And I'm like, okay, when you're done, are you going to come back to Nigeria? She said, hell no. She is going to remain in Australia because she thinks she has a better job opportunity there. She has a better standard of living waiting for her once she's done. So what can we do to have a country that is like that? 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You've brought the part that is more passion to me than anything else. And that's around people development, youth opportunity. As of 2022, Q1, the youth unemployment stood at 40%. Within this age category, we have people between 15 and 35 years, totally under or underemployed. Quite heartbreaking. Now, there's so much that we can do to ensure that we tackle this situation and drive large-scale employment. Now, we can start to even begin to look at the policies around education. Are those policies and education and curriculum equipping children to be able to, stimulate and create and do things on their own outside of the rote learning that a lot of the typical Nigerian universities are doing? Are we just churning out people who are waiting for employment? Are we churning out people who are enablers, who can create employment, who are catalysts in their own right? Now we need to begin to look at those systems so that we can very systematically create and churn out people who can become not only creator of opportunities, but employers of labors themselves. Now that takes me again to my passion, which is entrepreneurship. We need to consistently create the environment where enterprise will foster. I always love to share about a lot of the SME catalysts that are within my mentorship network. And I do mentor a lot of them, and I love to speak about them. I have 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺𝗺. If we do not know her, starting just from her kitchen, she started to make pap for export. But she did not start for making pap for export. She started to make pap to serve mothers whose children want fresh meals. And so you go into food stores, you see cereals of all brands from all over the world, Asia, Europe, and America, and then she's looking inwards. So from the agriculture and food efficiencies we've talked about, she's able to take from that same, create another value chain, which is producing easy to make pap for mothers who want good food for their children. Now, today, as I speak, she started to export that to 2-3 countries. There are many more like her. Go check her out. There are so many more like her. Now, youth employability is such an issue that I always want to speak around. And there is just so much that we can do to make them, more employable. Sports development. Have we thought about sports? Do we understand the power of sports and how much we can do to even get people employed from that sector? But all we know is there's a lot of funding around it, but we don't know where the fund is going. We're not even using it to keep children out of streets. We're not using it to boost the confidence of children. We're not using it to create alternative employment. We are simply putting money and waiting for Olympics so that half the contingent is just travel. But I also would love to speak to one thing that is very critical. And I love it that you actually asked me to speak after Dio, because Dio said something that is very instructive. And he said, let's look at reality and practical structures. And I want to share reality and practical structures. And mine is from a case study by the organization which I lead, that is 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗺. I'd like to share with you a few of the things that we have done over the last 2.5 years with regards to developing youth. Now, first of all, we built a very interesting and exciting program called the Youth Connect. Check that name out, Youth Connect. We totally recognize the role that we play as an organization. We totally understand also that the financial service sector that we work for is the biggest employer of labor when you take out government, probably even as big or bigger. Now, the financial service sector would always require capacity and capability. And so we built the Youth Connect as a project and initiative whereby we are able to create sharp minds as funnel for that industry. Now, considering the fact that the issues of Africa, the issues of Nigeria is the same issues of every other country in Africa, we developed a very innovative program which we call Building Africa with Technology and Innovation after our Youth Connect project. And I'm going somewhere with this. So under this project, all we are looking for is our major driver, which we call the I-Earth. I for innovation, Earth, innovate Earth. Yeah, so strong and powerful. So we have our I is innovation, our E is the environment, our A is agriculture, our R is renewable energy, our T is technology, and our H is health. We do understand that within this acronym lies all of the problems of the nation and the continent, Africa. And our businesses of the industries and markets we serve are everywhere around Africa. So on this program, every single time we bring sharp, smart minds together through a competition across the entire African continent. And I'm not kidding you, over 38,000 applications severally. A minimum of 38 countries entries. And each time we do that, we are giving them opportunity to bring ideas in these whole areas. These are ideas that can be harnessed, whether it's around innovation, whatever it is that you innovate, alternative solution to important matches, it's okay, it's innovation, bring it on. Or anything around environment or agriculture. It's amazing that even the organizations that work with us on this call and this work are global firms like IBM. Now, organizations like IBM recognize the great things we're doing with youth around technology innovation, and they come join us as partners. You know what? We are going to be teaching this pool of young, smart minds you are molding design thinking. Design thinking is about creativity and innovation. How do you create the next big thing? So we're passionate about organizations like IBM who see that vision and go with us. As we speak, even in this room, several organizations put 100 to 200 million on areas that you are out as sponsorship on areas that will not have any return on investment or develop the youth. The global companies like IBM walk the talk with us and run these continental programs. Each time is amazing the sort of ideas that come from these people. So the issue is, who is investing in these ideas? We can't leave it to government. Individuals can do that. Corporations can do that. And anybody who is on this call that is ready to also be able to work this talk with us at 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗺s, come, let's work together and catalyze the youth. The second, remember, we're keeping it real and practical. The second very innovative program that we designed in 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗺 is what we call FOA, the Future of Work Academy. Now, we all know that the skills that are required today are not the skills 10 years ago, 5 years ago, not even 3 years ago. So even those young people, did they really have the skills for the new place of work? The curriculums in the universities that they have attended has been the same 10, 15, 20 years ago. The world has changed. The curriculum has not changed. So what we have done is build a pipeline of very innovative curriculum that can help equip them. Help to brush them up around digital skills. So under our Future of Work Academy, we teach them digital skills, use of Microsoft applications, because they would come out without touching computer. The organizations and offices will need them to use that, isn't it? So we're helping to teach them. And so we're working universities, NYSC, equipping them, brushing them. We're also helping them to finish school better. So with what we actually call our finishing school model, we are helping to eliminate people who come out, they're not even confident they can speak English. All of the I am and am and the being and be that you all see in the memos, and they wonder, did these people go to school? We've taken it upon us within our Future of Work Academy to clean all of those out, because nobody's got the time to start teaching people basic lexics and structure. Within the same forward program also, we've got the enterprise, because again, I would not stop to say, millennials and Gen Zs are entrepreneurial. They love enterprise. So we have to teach them that, so that even when you are done with school, please go straight and learn something or do something for yourself. So I've spoken about digital skills, creating the finishing school concept for them, as well as enterprise. That's two. And I'll speak about third. The third and the last is what we do with Innovation Hub. Within our FITC Innovation Hub, still under our Youth Connect project, we create hackathons. Under these hackathons, you see people come who are able to develop things around the models that will deliver our economy. So they are creating things around technology, cybersecurity, and through hackathon, they're actually creating new programs and new products that are usually very impactful. Again, we need people to work with. We're keeping it real, and we're speaking from a practical perspective. But so what we are doing really at FITC with the Youth Connect and this platform is building a pipeline and building a bridge where we're able to finish people off, clean them up, dust them up, and then create a platform as catalyst for growth. Keeping it real. And I challenge the economy, I challenge everyone who is here, organizations, corporations, government agencies, all of you. Right on FITC, you already know what we're capable of, and we can clean up the youth better and drive scale around that. I just thought to share, because that's a fantastic case study that we are passionate and excited about, and we always want to talk about it.
All right, fantastic, 𝗧𝗵𝗼𝗺. And just to be clear, we are going to join you on this. The Nairametrics team would contact FITC as well. We'll have amazing ideas. I think there's a lot that we can collaborate on. And please, I enjoy everyone to collaborate as well. Time is fast spent. My God, we wanted to finish this by 12, but your speakers can indulge us. We'll probably just extend by another 15 minutes. Rochus, I think we have 1 or 2 questions from our participants.
Well, we have a lot. We have a lot of questions. I'm trying to see these. There's some very interesting questions. Very quickly, let's bring Taiwo Oyedele back in. A question here from 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗲. She says, Taiwo, in your experience as a tax expert accountant in Nigeria, and this is very interesting, what are the right and effective methods to adopt in engaging the government to institute policies? So Kabir is not asking about right methods to implement policies. Kabir is asking about the methods to adopt in engaging the government to institute policies that are proactive and attract export value. Taiwo, your thoughts? They're asking for techniques.
Good question. I've been on this for almost 20 years, so I have a lot to say, but I'll try and summarize it. I think the most important thing when you're trying to engage government is to use data. So a lot of people go to government and they're just complaining from now till kingdom come. Life is difficult, we cannot survive. It doesn't mean a lot. When you use data to do your analysis and do comparison with care, right? Don't compare Nigeria with America. We're not America, we're not even in the same class. So find people in our class, find situations that are comparable, practical solutions, right? Don't just complain, also outline the solutions that you can provide. And more importantly, you have to be mindful of emotional intelligence and sensitivities. So one, there are people in government who don't have title, but they wield a lot of powers and influence. You need to respect all of them. Number two, you must find a narrative, something in it for the policymaker. So some of the policies I've, I can say I've driven, recently, including the exemption of minimum wage from tax. There was a political narrative that I provided to government. There was also the exemption of small businesses from VAT, using some data that IMF had provided that shows that 97% of VAT revenue was coming from 3% of taxpayers. So the other 97% were actually paying less than the cost of collecting it from them. So that data was very compelling. And then we have to be proactive. What I find most times in Nigeria, especially from the organized private sector, is they are so reactive. So they wait for everything to happen and then they start complaining. Maybe at that time you've lost half of the battle. So, and then you must be consistent in your messaging. So not that manufacturers will say yes, then Chamber of Commerce will say no, and then some people in the middle will say, well, this is the best government since sliced bread. We need to come together and say, this is what we want for our country, and then be able to articulate those policy issues, be consistent with them, find the right platform, and then just make sure that we never give up, because I don't think we have an option. We have to keep pushing.
Thank you so much for that, Taiwo. Mr. Johnson-Chukwu, I want to come to the question is from 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗲. Actually, sorry, Anto Ilya. It says, what is really the impediment for implementing the existing development policies or amended one? What exactly is the problem in your view, Mr. Johnson-Chukwu?
I think the problem is just one problem, and that problem is leadership. To implement any policy, you have to buy into that policy. Sometimes we have people who have been elected in the offices who just ask some people to put together a document for them, which they call their policy document. And they had no buy-in to those policy documents. They were not interested in it. It was just basically a scheme to attract voters in the case of elections. But there are also policies that were inherited by subsequent governments from previous government, which they never bought into it. So the core thing for us to get policies implemented is to get a leadership right. A lot of things that were happening today, I mean, when Taiwo was talking about getting government to buy into accept reforms, is that in many instances in the country today, we are hitting our head against the wall. In fact, the wall is even a lighter object. We're hitting the head against the stone. You are talking to people who are not listening to you. It goes to one ear and goes out from the other ear, or it doesn't even enter any ear at all. So we need to get a leadership right, and this has presented us at that point. I'm happy this is happening in the pre-election year. For Nigerians to get a leadership right, interrogate the personality of the leaders, so that you have people who subscribe to that they are presenting to us, and that way you can hold them responsible and accountable to the policies they presented to us. And if they buy into it, they have an overwhelming obligation to implement it. You really can't implement what you don't subscribe to. If you do, you do it half-heartedly. But core of the foundation, the problem is get leadership right. Leadership define values. Leadership define culture. Leadership will institute systems that work for the people, and leadership will come with vision, and leadership will drive this vision. And because they want to drive the vision, they've selected the right people that will help them drive the vision. Without that, you really can't get any of the policies implemented.
Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson-Chukwu. I quickly want to hop on now to Dio. Dio, this question is from Joseph Olaola. Apparently, he's a business reporter with the International Center for Investigative Reporting. He references a very big tech company. They're worth about I think their market value is $3 billion or so. I think we all know who they are. They've been in the news.
Actually, I was just typing a response to him.
Aha, okay. So for the benefit of...
Actually, I was just typing a response to him.
Okay, yeah. But let me just get the question out so that everybody else can see. So the questions to you is, are Nigeria, and by the way, the company has responded to these allegations. So that is, just to put that out there, everybody. They've denied them, and that is something that's being attended to. But Joseph's question for you, Dio, I think that is 3. Are Nigerian tech firms above the law? Are they over-regulated or under-regulated? What is the SEC doing to profile many of firms that are evading scrutiny? Thank you.
Okay, so three things. Thank you very much, Mr. Olaoluwa. So no one is above the law. That is one, whether tech or drug dealer or something. Anyone, no one is above the law. So first thing is, but for you to run foul of the law, there must be a law in the first place. Where there's no law, there's no sin. So that brings me to the issue of regulation. What we had before now, then again, there are some, because some of the allegations, these tech companies, some of them border on criminals, some are civil, you know, so it depends on what arms of law. I'm not a law, well, where I'm an apex regulator. So I'm not a law enforcement agent, but I mean, we're all working in arm of the government and an agency of the government. So at least by extension, it's implementation of some of its external laws still fall on our plate. So no one is above the law. So that's the answer to your question, whether tech or non-tech. Two is, are they over-regulated, under-regulated? I think we're still chiseling out the regulation, because one of the earlier comments was still talking about, SEC and CBN, one is forward-looking, one is static, and all of that. And it will interest you to know if while we're on this call, I still got a quick report about something about CBN adjusting some of its policies to accommodate more of like tech or tech-related instruments. So in terms of regulation, I said it in one of my earlier comments. What we have done since September 2020 was to acknowledge that fintech, crypto, digital assets are here. The trades are happening here. We see the level of activity and the level of funding that goes through and into it. So the question is, what do we do to look into it and make sure that only intended and well-meaning actors provide the platform and invest in it? So I would say the regulatory space is evolving. Even after we came up with our classification of digital assets, and that simply says that, you know, there's this fungibility in the use of the language crypto assets and cryptocurrency. You know, it depends on the usage. When anything is a fiat is money. You use it as a means of exchange. That is an exclusive preserve of the Central Bank of Nigeria. But when it is used as an investment tool, then it falls squarely on our lap. And we said it very clear. So it is not anything ambiguous or any complex statement. I will I'll share with Nairametrics to share with everybody that has registered. So just to point you to where it is, we just said anything, you know, if it quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, and it's a duck to us. If it has the characteristics of an investment, Securities and Exchange Commission would take it on. Now, to whether we're doing anything about people that are erring, I mean, it was really, really on the news in December 2020/January 2021, when one of the fintechs that was marketing capital market instruments, we took the operator to the courts, to IST, to Investment and Security Tribunal. It was stopped. Or, I mean, the business was stopped, whether he or she, I don't know. Well, they were stopped from doing that. And it increasingly gets so. What we have now done in advancement, instead of just saying stop, 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 is to create an avenue. We've had several meetings, create rules that if you want to operate within these rules, because those are rules and those regulations are areas where you can monitor and to ensure. And again, I want to use this opportunity, if you allow me, Ugo and Rotus, just quickly, to debunk the widely pushed narrative. So it's a matter of a government versus us. Now, let me use one very good example. If you have a well-meaning business that is not so well understood, so you have two issues. The people that could support you in terms of patronage don't understand it well enough. So that means when they are putting their money, they don't even understand, which makes that kind of business model very susceptible to any bad-meaning actor who will just shroud it under the meaning of, you don't understand it anyway, just bring your money. And once someone puts money in a platform that resembles yours as a fintech operator and they flee with it, trust goes out of the window. A run will come on your own business. So nothing you could say will win that, or it will be difficult, no, let me say nothing you could say, to win that trust back. So for us at 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺, it is not about the stick. It is not just about the carrot. It's just laying it out there, all there. Practicability, implementability, and reality. It's just, the reality is that fintechs are here. Are they regulated? Regulation is evolving. I think a month ago, about 3 weeks ago, we still released additional rules on cryptos. And again, if I might add, Nigeria definitely is leading in Africa in terms of making rules or looking into the digital asset space. Worldwide, we are one of the ones acknowledged to even be looking keenly into that space. I got some reports over last weekend as well that the US has just released its own. And this is something we're trying to get to catch up so that we can regulate that space, make it viable for the operators, and protect investors that go into them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dayo. There are so many questions. I don't know how we've done 2 hours already. I don't know how this happened. This is it, and there's so many more, but I got to bring 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺 back in. Nairametrics, you guys, you're blazing the trail. Ugo, your remarks, your closing remarks.
Right. Thank you so much, Rotus. 2 hours gone past already. I mean, we have very, very busy people here, so having them on for 2 hours, guys, I don't think you guys understand what this means. The cost of 2 hours for these guys is, I can't even quantify it. So we're now at the final phase of this amazing webinar. There's been a lot to share, a lot to learn, and a lot that, you know, the politicians that are vying for electoral positions can glean from some of the things that they have said. But we will not go without closing remarks, and we will do an unusual kind of closing remark. So we will, we want, each of our panelists to close with their thoughts on 4 axes of challenges that we see in this country from a Nairametrics point of view. And each person will touch on one specific challenge. So I'm going to start with you first, 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗺, ladies first, like they usually say. So I want you to close on ASUU strike and education as your final remark. What do you advise the government to do? And to 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺, you're going to come next. Your own closing remarks is on Nigeria's energy crisis, subsidy removal particularly. What do you advise the government to do? And then we'll come to you next, Oga Johnson. I want you to focus on crude oil theft. It's a huge problem for us. What do you think the government should do, sir? Just your own candid advice to the current government and incoming government as well. And then finally to you, Dayo, on the axis of evil, the evil that has befall the entire world, inflation. What should Nigeria do to bring down inflation from your own fountain of knowledge? So those are going to be our closing remarks. And I'm going to start with you, 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺, quickly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ASUU strike. I would suggest to government to have a discussion with ASUU and the representatives of the models to our future children. There are models which mean that besides the fact that they are impacting knowledge on these children, young people also always and oftentimes look to their professors. So you have a great professor in physics, you want to study physics. You have a great professor in engineering, you want to go engineering. So now let's not leave the role models out of, equipping and shaping these young minds for tomorrow's leadership. It may sound daunting, the request from ASUU and their representatives, but I do know also that in negotiations, you meet midway. And there is no way that we are not able to meet midway with these people who are fueling and driving passion and catalyzing growth among our children who are tomorrow's future. But I do not want to end this without also a word to even the strike in ASUU. One critical issue around there is technology embrace. Our lecturers, our professors are terribly challenged with digital migration and adoption. A lot of the reasons that they are not also accepting some of those that bother around technology is their lack of knowledge of what technology can do. I would also encourage them to embrace technology so that they can be truly leaders. Because you cannot be in any institution of learning in the 21st century. I have a great concern with an aspect that has to do with technology and operations, whether it's with regards to finance or with regards to But it is important that they also understand that, so that every single person can come together and meet midway. But more importantly, we need the young people back to school. Having anybody out of school for a year, a month, even a term is debaculous. Because what's going to happen to the beats that they have learned before that time? It's either wasted. And education, like we know, is a fundamental pillar for growth and development. So if we don't consistently invest and ensure that we drive consistency with their and bring stability to education, we would never build a solid economy. So please hear the yield of and the yearnings of all of these people, and let's do what is right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. She's an amazing closing remark there. I'll move straight to you, 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗲.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting, discussion. So on fuel subsidy, I'll be very practical. So there are three things I think government should do. Number one is we need to count the costs and report it correctly. So subsidy cost is being underreported. So depending on who you ask, they say it's 4 trillion, it's 6 trillion. But that amount, one, excludes FX subsidy. So for petrol, you get, they're using our dollars as 415. The guys who are importing diesel are not even getting it at 415. So think about the difference between 415 and about 620. That's almost 50% subsidy that is not accounted for. Number two, there is the tax subsidy. So all over the world, you find between 20 to 80% tax of the pump price, right? About 20 to 80% of the pump price is tax. Nigeria is not collecting that tax. That is cost. That should be accounted for. Number three is government is actually borrowing. So because NNPC is not remitting to FARC because of subsidy, government is borrowing and paying double digits. So effectively, you can say that we're actually borrowing to pay the subsidy, because without the subsidy, the borrowing will be less. That amount needs to be added. My view is that at least the cost of subsidy that is reported is about 80% more if we account for it correctly. That's number one. Number two issue is government needs to address the inefficiency and corruption in the system. I say this because Benin is our next door neighbor. We can say that we are smuggling petrol to them. That's why petrol is about $1 per liter. But we're not smuggling diesel to them because our diesel is more expensive than theirs. Their diesel is $1 per liter. And they're also importing refined diesel. How come diesel lands in Benin, next door neighbor to Lagos, at $1, but it lands in Nigeria at almost $2? Because you have issues with clearing, with all manner of agencies, with storage, with logistics. We can address those without costing government any money. Even the NNPC says they import about 63 million liters per day, but consumption is more than 63 million, and it's only NNPC that is importing. The math is not adding up. So those corruption and inefficiency in the system have to be addressed. Lastly, we must negotiate a plan to remove the subsidy. We cannot keep kicking the can down the road. Number one, government needs to communicate clearly and consistently. Not that Ministry of State for Petroleum will say A, GMD will say B, President will say X. It's too confusing. They need to come together, communicate to Nigerians very clearly, negotiate with labor. My view is if you put 20% pay rise on the table, the labor leaders will be on their own. Their members will say, you know what, because they know the cost will not be up to 20%. The impact on inflation is exaggerated. You can go back in time. We've increased the price of petrol by up to 80% before. Look at the inflation rate for those periods. Nothing compared to what people fear now. And then you need to think about that removal has to be done in a phased manner, because every time we want to remove subsidy, it comes with scarcity. That scarcity is actually a bigger problem than the removal itself. If you face it in a smart way, then you address some of those problems. And I've said before, what if you just increase the price of petrol ₦1 per day until you get to the market price and you eliminate it? So that ₦1 per day is not enough for anybody to hold it, right? And it's not enough for them to double the price of fares from Ajah to anywhere, for example. And finally, you need to ensure that overall, you are sincere in your communication with the Nigerian people. We cannot afford Sri Lanka situation. This was how they started. And then they got to a point where they didn't even have fuel at all. They only had enough to last one day. I pray that will not happen, but we need more than prayer. We need to take practical steps, and urgently so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Taiwo. We need more than prayer. I like the way you said it, negotiate a plan to resolve fuel subsidy. That's a very important word there, negotiate a plan. Over to you, Sir Johnson.
Okay, I will start by saying appreciating your team for this webinar. I think it's been quite exciting. I didn't believe I would spend 2 hours here. We have done more than 2 hours. Okay, but back to the question you threw at me. I think the basic thing we need to do, we need to engage the inhabitants or the residents of oil-bearing assets. We've tried gumbo strategy, it didn't work. I mean, when this current government came into power, they adopted a gumbo strategy to cow the residents of oil-bearing assets or the inhabitants of oil-bearing assets, and those who fought back and frustrated production. You see, it beggars logic for you to believe that a man who is pauperized will live in his thatch house with water flowing into his house, and the pipeline is just behind his compound, and you either expect him to use the pipeline or to do nothing and die of hunger. We need to bring development to those areas. The current NDDC is not working, it's not effective. Ministry of Niger Delta is not effective. We have to review our approach to developing the Niger Delta oil-bearing areas, Niger Delta zones or areas. If we don't give them value for what is extracted from their backyard, we cannot successfully fight the level of oil theft. The concept of value creation is that when value is created, everybody in the entire value chain, if you an accountant, you know about value addition or added, what do you guys call it? Value added statement, which breaks down the value created by an organization according to those who benefit or get that value. We need to go back and do that when it comes to the oil and gas assets. As it stands today, we are extracting value from the Niger Delta zone area, but they're not getting a single portion of those values. And that's why they have every reason to be angry. And without that, we can't improve on in reducing the level of oil theft. If you go to those areas, and I've gone to places like Bayelsa, some parts of rivers, some parts of Delta, you will see, you can touch and feel poverty. So the question is that, if you remember the story of when some of them were brought to Abuja and they looked at street lights, well paved, and they say, wow, is this still Nigeria? And they got back and we became more determined to disrupt oil production. So the summary of it is that we must, one, get a share of the value, the share of the heart, not value, a share of the heart of residents of the oil-bearing assets. And we must do that by giving something back to them: infrastructure, education. If more of their citizens, if you have 90% literacy level in those areas and they have employment, I mean, the person who is well employed, any good income, will not go into the trenches and be carrying gun to be breaking pipelines. Without that, we are not going to get these issues. We must bring development to the Niger Delta zones. We must bring education to the Niger Delta zones. We must give them the quality of life and the hope of better life to live for, so that they will willingly accept that crude and gas is produced from their area and they have benefit in it. The government has already passed what they call the host community act to ensure that part of the values are passed on to the host community. There must be some kind of shared interest in oil and gas production. And under the Host Community Act, they are supposed to be shareholders in whatever company or whatever asset that is being mined from their location. That way, they will have an alignment of their interests with the interests of the nation or our national interests. Without that alignment, you really can't fight this war. Thank you, and remain blessed.
Thank you so very much, sir. And I couldn't agree, more with you. It makes absolute sense to allow the host community to be part of the entire process. I mean, once you have them part of the process, it's very difficult to have oil theft or have militants come back. They become, part of an entire industry, and that is what we should encourage. Thank you so much, sir, for the closing remarks. And finally, to you, sir, Dayo, on inflation, how do we tame it?
So I'll join Mr. Chukwu in just thanking you, since it's our closing remark. I know I have the opportunity, and it's been a very, very, very big privilege to share a platform with people in the private sector from whence I came, and I don't know from whence I might return, to dissect matters on relating to our day economy. Now, on inflation, it's not going to be a flash in the pan. It's you move towards reducing inflation. It's not something you do. You switch off a button or switch on a button and it will just go down. So my own advice is two-pronged. The CBN has a lot to do. And I think they should switch. My own first thing is just advice that they switch from monetary framework to inflation targeting. Inflation targeting, we've practiced it in this country, and we saw the results, though it was a bit late. But I think we need to switch into that. Harmonizing the exchange rates. At some point, I think 4 or 5 years ago, there was a time we had like 5 or 4, I think about 4 different exchange rates in this country. There should be a conscious move towards having a stable and harmonized exchange rate, because that will create an avenue for, should I say, confidence or clarity for anybody bringing money from outside the country, knowing fully well they'll be able to repatriate the money. You know, when you're going into another economy, profitability now splits with different risks. The risks that the chances of what you had planned will come to fruition to the extent that your 1 naira will turn 1 naira 50 kobo. There's a risk there. But the risk also subsists that even if you made 2 naira instead of the 150, by the time you're converting the currency back, is it available to even go out? And by the time you're going out in your own local currency, will it now mean 80 kobo? That is what is killing foreign portfolio investment, really. And all of this, as an asset management person, and even now in government as an operations person, I try to follow rule of the pencil. Anything that can be explained, just as we're saying it verbally, maybe it's not meant to be understood or I don't understand it well enough. If you're going from Ido to Agbara and you take same transportation, 100 naira yesterday, and it's 1 naira 50 kobo, I mean 150 naira today, inflation has hit you by 50%. There's no need going math and all of that. When you talk about food, how much was a bag of rice then? How much is a bag of rice now? Now, secondly, for the government is to continue in its effort. Because, you know, problem identification is the first level towards problem resolution. I know there have been so many identification. Part of what we are doing now is problem identification. All these papers, I've seen a couple of people suggesting that, oh, all the brilliant ideas that have been exchanged here, how do we get it to government? I work in government. So I don't think the government and we all are bereft of what our problems are. We live the problems every day. Do we have a roadmap to solution? Yes. But I think the major gap that needs to be focused on is in the implementation and the will to do so. And the will to do so, you know, they say the fish rots from the head. We know it will be spearheaded by leadership. And we're in the pre-election season. I'm sure and God helping us, will select the next person to lead us right in this nation to help us achieve most of these things. So I think the final thing I'll say is to work ardently towards import substitution. And as this import substitution is easy to create and throw all these economic terminologies around, if there's no productivity, sustainable productivity, if it just all ends up being another phrase which I've just dropped on this platform and it doesn't add to the bottom line. And on that note, thank you very much for inviting the DG, and I do hope I've been able to adequately represent him in the manner of the questions that have been asked. Thank you.
Absolutely, Dayo, absolutely. And please do extend our greetings to the DG as well. And also thanking him for allowing you represent him as well. It's been an amazing session, everyone. I just want to use the opportunity to thank, first of all, thank 𝗧𝗵𝗼𝗺 for being on this session. I know how difficult it is to get you on sessions like this. Thank you so much, 𝗧𝗵𝗼𝗺. Like I mentioned, Nairametrics will always be there to partner you and your organization with everything that you guys are doing. And to my guy, the top Johnson, I admire you so much. Already, the last time we had one session, I told you you're my mentor immediately because the way you took these questions, even me that people come to ask questions or people invite for sessions like this, I learned so much from you, sir. And thank you so much, sir, for giving us this time. We know how busy your time is. Thank you so much, sir. A pleasure. And to Taiwo, my Oga from I'm sure you've forgotten so many people that you've taught in this country. I was one of your students some years back, so I'm sure you can. And then I used to remember, like, how is this young guy that's just lecturing us? And you must be dropping fountain of knowledge. Thank you so much, sir. Always a pleasure. Having you on board, and PwC as well. PwC always sends us, their partners on this session. And thank you so much again. And to 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏, you're a member of the Nairametrics team, so thank you once again. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of nuggets for your show on Monday on Arise. In case you guys don't know, 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 anchors Arise, the business section of on Arise TV. One of the most popular TV stations in Nigeria and Africa as well. And to the Nairametrics team who did the good work here, thank you all so much. And Dayo, again, thank you so much. I hope we can have you here as well again, another session. And to those of you, the panelists who are asking for more, you know what, we do this every quarter, but I think we're going to be doing something like this on a monthly basis. Might not be this elaborate, but we'll try and bring in a very, very big masquerade. You don't want to know who we are looking at targeting this time around, but we're going to bring in somebody who is going to be on the hot seat and tell us what it is they plan for this country. Thank you all so much, everyone, and do have an amazing weekend and the most profitable week ahead. Thank you so much. This is also Nairametrics. Goodbye, everyone, and see you again next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.